Before I get started, I want to give some credit for the photographs that I'm going to be using. There's some black and white historic photographs. They come either from the Benaki Museum's collections or from the collection of the American School of Classical Studies in Athens. It's a Philhellenic institution that has been in Athens and now in Crete as well since 1881. And I'm honored to say the executive director, George Orphanakos, is here tonight with us. In the creation myths of the ancient Greeks, 3 gods drew straws. Zeus won the longest one and became the king of the sky, as well as the ruler of mortals and gods. Poseidon became the ruler of the seas, while Hades, who drew the shortest straw, became the ruler of the underworld. The sky belongs to the immortal ones, but human life consists of the tension between sea and land, between feeling tethered or adrift, being on earth or water, staying home or venturing out, calculating risks and rewards. The poet Odysseus Elitis said, if you deconstruct Greece, you will see an olive tree, a grapevine, and a boat remain. In our short time together, I will tell you about that boat, filled with transport amphoras of olive oil and wine. The story of Odysseus is an allegory for the journey through life. He is the metaphysical symbol of Hellas. Would Odysseus have become Odysseus without the sea? Would ancient Greece have become Hellas without Odysseus? This hero epitomizes Greek encounters with the sea in ancient times. Tell me, O muse, of the man Polytropon, so full of experience, the man of twists and turns, Hosmalapola who was driven to wander so very far and wide, epe Troiesieron Toliethron Eperse, after he had sacked the sacred citadel of Troy. He saw the cities of many men, Idein Polon Danthropon, and he got to know them. But many the woes he suffered deep in his core upon the sea. Polad hon gen pon toi pathen algia hon katathumon, struggling to secure his own life, arnumenos hein gypsuchain, and a homecoming for his comrades, ken noston heteron. Note here the proximity of algia, the third line up here, and nostos. When combined, it is the word nostalgia, the pain when thinking of home. In the Greek, we should notice the word poli and pola and polon, polytropon, polon danthroponi dynastia, polad hogen pontoi. I think Homer is signifying here that Odysseus had a full life with so many experiences, everything in the extreme. And finally, saving his own life and his concern for his men shows Odysseus' leadership and humanity. So note the word hetairon right after noston, a homecoming for his companions. The word polytropon only occurs 4 times in all of Greek literature, twice in the Odyssey, twice in the Homeric hymns, and never again. I've seen it translated in so many ways. Clever, the man of many devices, wily, the quick-witted one, courageous man, he who has wisdom because he journeyed far and survived it. So here's a picture or depiction of Odysseus from a classical vase. He's at sea, listening to the song of the sirens, that most dangerous of all threats. The music lulls sailors into forgetting their destination, their home, their nostos. Taking all reasonable precautions, plugging his sailor's ears with wax, tying himself up so he won't jump overboard to stay with the sirens forever. He stands for every man, naked, exposed, at sea, enduring dangers in order to experience every extraordinary thing life has to offer. En pontoi, at sea. The Greek city-states were landlocked, but most had land that included shoreline. By living in the in-between space, between land and sea, between the Balkans and southern Europe, the ancient Greeks depended on intelligence, ingenuity, and an entrepreneurial spirit. Focusing on the period between the 8th century and 3rd centuries BC, let's take a look in the Mediterranean or Black Sea areas at some evidence in texts and archaeology for long-distance trade, travel, and exchange. With few exceptions, the homeland of Greece and the Aegean had to rely on trade for many basic natural resources. Lacking copper or tin, all bronze had to be imported, for example. After the long Dark Ages following the collapse of the Mycenaean civilizations in the early 12th century BC, the growing populations developed city-states, the polis, and as soon as the Greeks began to depict humans on their pottery, in this case, a late geometric cup from circa 760 BC, we see men in ships. From the mid-8th century BC, adventurous young sailors risked everything to establish footholds around the Mediterranean and Black Seas. These optimistic fellows hoped to settle or take land and build a utopia where all settlers were given equal shares of the new land and equally bore the risks and rewards of collaboration. Young men left their Chorio, the mother city, the metropolis, to found colonies. With such courage, they created Greater Greece. For about 200 years, cities from the purple areas sent out expeditions to found new Greek city-states in the blue areas. For example, Phocaea in Asia Minor sent a colony to Massilia in 600 BC. Today's Marseille in France, bringing with them the grapevines and the skills to make wine. Quote, the people of this city, Phocaea, were the first Greeks to make distant sea voyages. They discovered the Adriatic Sea, Tyrrhenia, Iberia, and Tartessus, says Herodotus in the histories. Another ancient author relates why the Phocaeans left their home in Asia Minor. The Phocaeans, compelled by the smallness and infertility of their territory, had applied themselves more to the sea than to the culture of the ground, supporting themselves by fishing, merchandise, and above all by piracy, which in those days was thought an honorable occupation. Venturing accordingly to visit the remotest shores of the ocean, they came into the Gulf of Gaul and to the mouth of the river Rhone, and charmed with the pleasantness of the country and relating on their return home what they had seen, they tempted others to go to the same ports. The colony established the first Greek port in the Western Mediterranean, bringing Greek culture, including architecture, to France and Spain, with theaters, agoras, and temples. Throughout the Mediterranean and Black Seas, the Greek explorers and colonists built ports to accommodate trading ships and warships when necessary. This map shows all the ancient ports attested in all of ancient Greek and Latin literature. You'll notice the thick concentration around the Aegean. We imagine ships coming into these ports, bringing in raw materials and finished products, staples and luxuries, inventions and new ideas too. Greeks and non-Greeks met in these ports, sailed to the same places, and traded. Many networks grew of craftsmen, lenders, ship owners, captains, and the merchants and buyers waiting for their goods in other ports. Sea voyages were vital to the spread of Greek inventions and goods, but the sea also facilitated the transmission of their ideas, writings, political systems, religious practices, philosophy of education, and the Greek way of life. With a small boat they left, and with the well wishes of the winds. Ancient Greek merchant ships were slow, 6 knots, but sturdy, capable of carrying 100 to 150 tons of burden. Below deck was the cargo. The shipping container for all of antiquity was called the amphora, a double-handed jar used for transportation. From the port, there would be work for crews with donkeys and carts to bring the goods into the towns and across roads to nearby villages. It used to be thought that an amphora held olive oil or wine exclusively. Only recently, with scientific tests like residue analysis, has it been proven that these jars carried a whole lot of other things: fish, nuts, and vegetables, and herbs, and in the case of one shipwreck, an amphora contained beef ribs. The entrepreneurial city-states made high-quality wines and olive oils and bottled them in distinctive shapes. These fetched a good price. The Corinthians were known for their oil-based perfumes, and about half of all known Corinthian perfume bottles were excavated in the Greek colonies or native Italian cemeteries. By living in proximity with Greeks, other cultures adopted Greek habits and then purchased Greek goods to adopt the Hellenic lifestyle. One author wrote, "From the people of Marseille, therefore, the Gauls learned a more civilized way of life. Their former barbarity laid aside or softened, and by them they were taught to cultivate their lands and to enclose their towns with walls. Then, too, they grew accustomed to live according to laws and not by violence. Then they learned to prune the vine and plant the olive, and such a radiance was shed over both men and things that it was not Greece which seemed to have immigrated into Gaul, but Gaul that seemed to have been transplanted into Greece." If indeed the local people adopted Greek lifestyles to this extent, they would need to import Greek pottery, clothing, weapons, and more. So the merchants of Thasos were famous for marketing their wines. In the spirit of entrepreneurship, manufacturers stamped the handles of the amphoras with their brand names, so to speak. And archaeologists can track the diffusion of wines from Thasos through finding these stamps in all the places that are dotted on this map, mainly along the northern coast of the Aegean, upwards through Thrace to Bulgaria and beyond. In archaeology, we see the presence of a highly valued imported product as a status symbol. So as we interpret this map, the further inland a Thasian amphora is found, the more valuable it became, and the customer in, say, Bulgaria was consuming and displaying this socially for prestige. Craftsmen, merchants, and community leaders cooperated to develop customers by luring ships sailing along trade routes in the Aegean and later Mediterranean Black Seas to stop in their ports. Along with such trade came news and information as well as ideas. A ship is safest in a harbor, but that's not what ships are for. Making multiple voyages was exciting, possibly lucrative, but surely dangerous. Merchant ships sailed only from May to October in the ancient world. Nevertheless, many went down. Shipwrecks provide us a wealth of information about the Mediterranean economy. Historians use statistics to estimate how many ships were sailing in any given century based on the number of shipwrecks that we know of. From that, we can guess at the robustness of the trade. This chart shows the number of Greek archaic and classical shipwrecks circled from about 600 to 300 BC in these bars, and you can see it jumping up when the Romans enter the scene, which typically means that there are far more ships sailing and a much more robust economy. However, the people in this room may reinterpret this chart as saying that they just weren't as good as sailing as the Greeks. On excavated shipwrecks, amphoras are the most plentiful cargo, found mainly because food, grains, barrels, fabrics all disintegrate, but the ceramic jars stay well preserved. On one ship alone, excavators found amphoras from Cyprus, Egypt, Asia Minor, mainland Greece, Rome, Spain, and North Africa, as well as the Aegean islands of Patmos and Samos. The Greek vase painter here uses 2 sideways amphoras, 2 fish, and some waves as code for a shipwreck. Boreas, the north wind, tortures Odysseus, naked except for a trident and his cape billowing in the wind. Contracts between merchants and lenders and ship captains dealt with the issue of what would happen if a cargo didn't make it to port. Sailors knew the risks. Homer describes a wreck, and the worst part was not the loss of merchandise, but being robbed of a homecoming of their nostos. My mates were thrown from the ship, and like sea crows, they bobbed on the waves around the black ship, and the god took their homecoming from them. Here in the 3rd line down, you can see peson dek neos hetairoi, the companions that were thrown from the ship. And the last line, you see theos dapoenetai noston. So this passage recalls the beginning of the Odyssey, ar numenos hein psychen ken noston hetairon, struggling for his life and a homecoming for his companions. So they bobbed on the waves around the black ship, and the god took their homecoming from them. The ancient Greek, being polytropos, recognizes that a nostos is a significant accomplishment. If one has been away a long time, much will have changed. As the philosopher Heraclitus stated, everything is always in flux. For the young men who ventured far from their mother city, their metropolis, to make a new polis in Greater Greece, homeland and home are in tension. The nostos experience can be complicated for young and old alike. If one stays at home, one never feels nostalgia. If one lives on the sea and is polytropos, nostalgia is the cost of the experience of living an adventurous life. For the ancient Greeks of the Aegean Sea, colonization was the first Hellenic diaspora. Their innovation and creativity in so many fields that shape our world 2,500 years later is due in no small part to their place in between the Greek homeland of the Aegean and the many peoples they lived beside in the wider world. The Mediterranean and Black Seas held the middle ground, tethering the emigrants to their homeland. Opportunities outside the original city-state of the Greek homeland drew young people with the promise of giving them a chance to have heroic, epic adventures. One by one, invisible to the Cyclops, Odysseus and his companions, his hetairoi, his pareia, leave the cave. Living in a diaspora gives us 2 homes, a homeland and our new adopted home. Either way, a nostos algia is a constant affliction. The homeland casts a long shadow. When the salty old sea captain Odysseus finally reaches Ithaca, much has changed. He is 20 years older than he was when he departed. His palace is turned upside down, and he returns to a dog grown old waiting at the front door. Sadly, Odysseus still has one more mission to take as he confesses to Penelope near the end of his epic. I will tell you, hiding nothing, though your heart will gain no pleasure from it, and nor does mine. Tiresias told me to travel through many cities of men, Polon, Anthropon, Astia, carrying a shapely oar, till I come to a race that knows nothing of the sea, that eat no salt with their food, and have never heard of crimson-painted ships, or the well-shaped oars that serve as wings. And he gave me this as a sign, one I could not miss, and now I tell it to you. When I meet another traveler who says that I carry a winnowing fan on my broad shoulder, there I must plant my shapely oar in the ground and make rich sacrifice to Lord Poseidon, a ram, a bull, and a breeding boar, then leave for home. The furthest place from Greek civilization is where the people don't even know there is a sea. They have never tasted salt or seen an oar. But Homer knows his listeners would find this unimaginable. Those people who knew not the sea were as imaginary as the sirens or the cyclops. Like us, ancient Greeks would have been born on land and with luck would eventually be laid to rest on land. But the lived life, their being in the world, cycled between stretches of time at home and risky and rewarding ventures at sea on pontoi. Anyone who lived a life such as this was polytropos. There is no separation between the ancient Greeks and the sea. I thalassa pusapira makria, the sea took you far away, και σε ξανάφερα στο γνώριμο λιμάνι, and it brought you back to the familiar port, χαρίζοντάς σου τη σιγή μπροστά στη σκάλα, giving you the silence in front of the moorings. Thank you.